right, welcome everyone. I see that we have a quorum. Kay Rogers will not be attending tonight. So we will continue. So welcome everyone. Tonight is the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District Board meeting. It's Wednesday, September 18th. It is 6:01 p.m. Welcome to everyone. If you can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
On
the
the Texas flag.
Thank you. So with that, we will move on to public comments. I've got two public comments, and I know Dr. Fernandes has asked for public comment, but we'll take Dr. Fernandes during the agenda item for LRE. So if anyone online has any public comments, please let us know. All right. If not, we'll start with Mr. Andy Weir.
Good evening, board members. I'm Andy Weir, Executive Director with the Simsboro Groundwater Defense Channel. I wanted to speak tonight and compliment the board and the district and their efforts that have been going through the education and outreach coordinator, especially the YouTube videos that she's been producing, Claire's been producing. They hope to engage people and to invite people to be involved in what Lost Pines is doing. So I wanted to just compliment the work that's happening and that y'all, created this position and fulfilled it with an excellent candidate. October 5th, we'll be at the Smithville Sustainable Home and Garden Conference. And there, we're going to have all the water people. We're going to have LCRA, Oxbow, Environmental Stewardship, SAWDEF, and Lost Pines all have our booths together. And then at in the gazebo, we'll have a presentation by Claire and myself. And I want everyone at the conference or at the expo to hear the services that the district provides and encourage people to register their wells. So I will follow Claire at that presentation to empathize. You all have the tool. And my role with SAWDEF is to be sure that people engage with Lost Pines District and become involved. Tune into these meetings now that they're online, tune into the YouTubes that she's creating, and hopefully become board members. They're actively, engaged with y'all. So wonderful work that's going on. I want to thank you all for that.
Next up, Alan. Board. Gardenhire. Thank you. Mr. Gardenhire.
Thank you, Elvis. Hi, my name is Alan Gardenhire, the Vice President of Operations for SLR Properties. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm going to be brief here, but I do want to just make this comment. And it's really regarding the idea of mitigation and regional mitigation. SLR Property we have property in both Miami and Lee County, so we deal with two different groundwater districts. So what I want to do is just encourage, I know Lost Pines has had a lot of issues on this topic and has continued to try to ask GMA 12 to consider how to possibly look at and implement some sort of regional aspect of mitigation. And so what I just want to go and quickly talk to you guys about that. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, again, aquifers in GMA 12 neither begin or end at the groundwater conservation district's boundaries. You got to know that. And accordingly, the production from landowner A that may affect landowner B, even though they're in different counties. And I know Lee County people are really aware of that as a result of some of the things that have happened in the most recent past. But because pumping causes regional impacts, mitigation should also be considered regionally on a regional level as well. And mitigation on a district by district basis is inherently can be unfair to somebody. And I know you guys have, gone through pains and have got a new established mitigation program. And Post Oak has a mitigation program. I know At this point, it's like Brazos, Groundwater Conservation District does not want to talk about regional mitigation. And I just want to encourage you guys to continue bringing that up, GMA 12, continue asking. GMA 12 includes 2 counties that aren't covered by groundwater districts. So it's a region-wide mitigation program will also help people that live in those counties that might be impacted. So funding mitigation should be at a regional level that's fair and allows for more pooling of dollars and more effective program across the aquifer region. So just preaching the choir. I know, but please continue to bring that up and see if we can convince the other partners in the GMA or the other people in the GMA 12 to continue working. I'm not going to tell you how I think it could work, but I just think you'll never figure out how it works until you continue discussing and try to figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, either online or here in the audience, that would like to provide some public comments? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to agenda item 3, the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are routine and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion or action on these items unless requested by a board director. Does anyone need to pull anything out of the consent agenda?
We accept the consent agenda. Second.
A motion to accept by Director Smith and second by Director Cole. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next up is regular agenda item 4A, announcements. I do have one announcement, and that's regarding the hearing examiner for the preliminary hearing of the Rambo contested case. That will take place on October 2nd here at the Giddings Lost Pines offices. And we do expect there to be a remote option for Zoom as well. And so again, that's on October 2nd. And that's for the preliminary hearing for standing.
Okay, that's all. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's what this is all about. This is just a preliminary hearing and it's only on the issue of standing. So that's October 2nd. I believe it's at 10 a.m. here at the district office. Any other announcements? Okay, moving on to agenda item 4B, discussion, consideration, and possible action on the renewal and extension of hydrogeology services contract with LRE Water LLC. With that, I guess we'll start with Dr. Fernans, who is online.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jordan Fernandes. I'm the head of the LRE Water group in Texas. I apologize, I can't be there in person today as I'm in our corporate office in Denver doing strategic planning, trying to figure out where we're going to go as a company and what services we're going to offer over the next 4 years or so. I just wanted to say thank you to the board members again for the trust that you've placed in us over these past 2 years. And we look forward to continuing this service that we're providing with you and working with you in all the important issues you have in Lost Pines. As you may know, Vince Claus, who was leading this effort with LRE and with you, he has resigned from LRE. And so moving forward, we hope to have Gretchen Miller, who's present in the audience tonight, to essentially be the head of LRE Water in behalf of projects undertaken by Lost Pines. I will continue to be involved. I'm very interested in of course, the surface water, groundwater interaction studies, as well as the socioeconomic analyses that we planned on doing. And so between Gretchen, myself, and Lauren Swintek, who's also in the audience, we've got you covered. And I just wanted you all to know that and say thank you again.
Thank you. And also not to forget Dr. Hutchinson, who's doing a lot of important work and will be presenting tonight. And he's doing a lot of good work, or I guess on the Bureau Reclamation grant next year. And LRE2 as part of the LRE2 case. So
LCRA.
LCRA too. Excuse me if I misspoke. With that, then let's turn it over to Vince. I believe, Vince, you'd like to make some statements?
Thank you. As I look back and I reflect on everything that we've done here in the last 18 months, maybe 19 months now, I have a lot to be thankful for, the opportunities that this board had provided me over that period of time, the trust that this board put in LRE and in me, is something that I'll never forget. A lot of very fond, grateful memories over that period of time. Just as I look back and I reflect on all the work that we have done, I think there's a lot to be celebrated. For this board specifically, we're talking about an 18-month period here, and what this board's accomplished in that short period of time for a board that meets once a month, it is truly remarkable and amazing. There's some GCDs that they've been in existence for 20, 30, 40 years, and have yet to do what we did in such a short period of time here. So I wanted to just once again reiterate, thank you for the trust that you put in me, that trust that you put in LRE. It's something that I don't take lightly, and something that has left a lasting impact on me personally and professionally. I can assure you that you're still in good hands. LRE is still a great company, a great place to be with for this next chapter, which is this new phase of groundwater model development that we're really embarking upon. As Jordan called out, he'll still be around and be actively involved. We have Dr. Miller, who's in attendance. So tenured faculty professor out of Texas A&M. She's an ASR expert. So as the city of Austin's starting to move forward with this ASR well field that we've all been hearing rumblings about now for 6 months overdue, we have someone that can step in directly there to give assistance. We have Lauren Swintek in attendance here too. Young gallery staff that's highly motivated, very technical and capable, more than willing to help continue everything that we've set into motion here. So say it one last time. Thank you. And I'll see everyone around, hopefully.
Good luck, Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to kind of close two loops, the boring tool update that Vince is working on, that's been verified in the test scenario in the test bed. So that's going to be shortly deployed. So that's pretty much well done. And then the other was the updates to the database, which Vince is going to finish up this week.
And you'll have that email tomorrow morning. It was almost there. And
Okay, so
didn't hit send on the email.
So one more email with the remaining data for the database updates, and then that'll be completed on your end. And then we'll just work with HAFS to get that updated. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I guess we could pass then the torch over to Dr. Miller.
Yeah.
Dr. Miller,
Great.
introduce herself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince. We are sad to be losing him, but I am happy to meet you all and have the opportunity to work with you in the future months and years. My background is in groundwater hydrology and engineering. I have both PE and PG license. I have expertise in a wide variety of groundwater areas, including well design, ASR, as Vince mentioned, and any kind of managed aquifer recharge. And I also have done work on groundwater surface water interactions and groundwater plant interactions. Groundwater ecosystem interactions is one of my specialties. So like I said, I'm looking forward to working with you all, and I hope I can do just as good a job as Vince. Welcome.
And would you like to introduce yourself? Got your name already. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Swintek. Like Vince mentioned, I am one of our so-called junior staff. I've been with LRE now for 2 years, and I specialize also in groundwater, surface water interactions, hydrologic planning, and those sorts of things. I'm just very honored to be here and excited to be working with each of you.
Thank you. Great. I think there was a question that the board had regarding Dr. Hutchinson and the contract for LRE and how Mr. Hutchinson may or may not be in that referenced in that contract, or how we get Dr. Hutchinson's services through LRE. Is that part of the so Mr. Fernan, Dr. Fernan's, Jordan, is that something you might give us some insight on how Dr. Hutchinson is structured, whether it's in the LRE contract or how do we get Dr. Hutchinson's services?
Sure, yeah, happy to explain. So basically, Dr. Hutchinson is a subcontractor through LRE. and he invoices us directly for the time spent on your behalf.
Okay. And then we get the invoice from LRE. At the end of the day, we get the invoice from LRE.
Correct, yeah, but the money that actually flows to Bill comes from LRE, but we also then charge you for it, and, you know, so it's just a pass through to us, no markup or anything.
Got it. Yeah, that's okay. Just wanted to verify that because there was a question on the board regarding that.
Sure.
Are there any other questions regarding LRE or their contract by any board member? Sure.
I have one, on exhibit A, the consulting fee schedule, okay, do we need to amend that to include, Dr. Miller?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So exhibit A does not have Dr. Miller in there yet. Does that go Dr. Miller's?
Right.
Okay, so we need to update exhibit A with Dr. Miller.
Okay, can we, if we're gonna vote on the contract, can we vote on the contract with the subsequent addition?
Right.
That,
Yes, we can do that.
thank you very much.
Yes, we can vote on the contract given certain changes that we ask for. So obviously that will be a change. So, yeah, page 12 of 14.
12 of 14.
Correct. That fee schedule exhibit needs to be updated with Dr. Miller. Any other questions or comments on the LRE contract? That I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion to renew the contract for 1 year.
Do we need to say with, Dr. Miller?
Yes, with Dr. Miller's updates.
The second.
So we have a motion and a second by Director Smith, and a motion made by Director Textor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that, motion passes. Next up, we have a presentation by Dr. Bill Hutchinson regarding DFC alternative methods and the conversion of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District's 2070 DFCs. Evening.
I can give you the mouse, but it's kind of a hair trigger.
Thank you. The request here that it's interesting. LREs, your consultants, and as Jordan explained them some, so I tend to work on specific things that pop up. So in this case, the specific thing that popped up was grew out of a presentation I gave about 18 months ago to this board on different ways that DFCs can be expressed. And so it was requested that I sort of flesh that out a little bit. And that is the subject of the report I wrote and this presentation. The report is still in draft form. At some point, I assume someone will say finalize it, but it's there for everyone to review and think about. So historically, as you may remember, the GMA 12 DFC's desired future conditions are updated every 5 years. And they are expressed as average drawdown over each district and aquifer unit. So Lost Pines has a DFC for each of the aquifers. Florida, Queen City, Corrito, Harbor Bluff, Finsboro, and Hooper. It covers both counties. Other districts of GMA have a similar setup, and in areas where there is no districts, it's broken down by county and all. That's one way of expressing. And as I show here, for example, the Simsboro DFC for Lost Pines is 240 feet of average drawdown from 2011 to 27. Now, there's other ways that you could take, and this is all based on a model simulation. It's known as S19. That could be expressed any number of ways. And so alternate ways to calculate the model output include artesian head, available drawdown based on a well, or available drawdown based on an aquifer. And GMA 14, which is the Gulf Coast aquifer, uses a modified version of the available drawdown by a well.
That's how they expressed their DFC back in 2021. We talked about that about 18 months ago. The next slide. So here's what we're talking about in terms of little diagrams that sort of tell you what each of these three terms mean. So in each case, we have a well that does not fully penetrate the aquifer. And the blue represents the water that's in the well. And you can see the ground surface, and you can see the depth of water could be measured as the distance between the ground surface and the water table. Or the bathymetric head in this case. Artesian head is basically the water level to the top of the aquifer. Remember, these are confined aquifers where the water level actually rises up above the top of the aquifer. That's what we're mainly dealing with here in especially in the main large permanent wells. So the artesian head is simply the height of the water above the aquifer, the pressure. Available drawdown in the well basically is the water level in the well minus the bottom of the well. So it's the height of the water. That's the available drawdown. And then that's based on the well. But since the well isn't fully penetrating, you can also do available drawdown based all the way down to the bottom of the aquifer. Go to the next slide. So if you want to do it based on available drawdown by well, we need a good database of wells and locations and depths. We've got that. I've done a little bit of work with the database that Vince is still polishing up. And so it's good for an evaluation at the district level, but not necessarily for other entities. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The next one. This is how the DFC was expressed at GMA 14. In the second round of joint planning, they basically ran the model one time. They plugged in the pumping and said, what's the drawdown? That's their DFC. There was a petition filed against that DFC. And so when we started the third round of planning, we were trying to avoid those problems. And so the available drawdown approach was used, and that bottom part there is the statement that was given for the DFC in each county in GMA 14. No less than 70% median available drawdown remaining in 2080, or no more than an average of 1 foot of additional subsidence between 2009 and 2080. That was a blanket statement that applied everywhere in GMA 14. And Blue Bonnet basically took that simulation that broke it down all the drawdowns and the maximum subsidence. And that was the DFC that was adopted. So just because you have a big blanket DFC, districts still have the opportunity to break it down the way they want to for their purposes. So the numbers here are not important. It's just a concept of breaking it down on a district level versus the GMA level. Now, if you wanted to do available drawdown by aquifer, you could do that everywhere because you have information from the model of top and bottom of the aquifer.
No, I want to order. I just need to. I order over here. Okay. I need to look at them. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's Kelly. Okay, of course it's Kelly.
She was fishing.
Problem with the aquifer approach is that you're implicitly assuming that everything below these wells, the aquifer below the wells, has the same characteristics, transmissivity or water quality wise. And that's not always good. Not a very good assumption. So that although you can do it that way, you're sort of imposing some unknowns into the process. Go to the next one. So artesian head, this could be applied everywhere in GMA 12 based on what we know from the model at the top of the aquifer in each cell and the water level. It's also an approach that helps you sort of look at the balancing test that GMA 12 has to do, because by using the artesian head, you're sort of wiping out a lot of the problems, inherent problems with the average drawdown. And so I've calculated area weighted artesian head for each cell organized by the GCD aquifer units. I start with the S19 simulation, just to get an idea of how that looks, the current DFC. Then I added the Brazos Valley permits that we'll talk about in the next presentation. And then I've also looked at the impact of turning off permanent pumping in Lost Pines, just to get an understanding of the sensitivity of this metric. And so the report has a complete set of all the results. I just present a few things here in this presentation. So in the Carrizo Aquifer, I've broken this down by district, and this is just for the Carrizo. Each one of these blue bars, the red numbers represent the 2070 area weighted average of artesian head expressed as a percentage of the 2010 artesian head. So we start with the 2010, that's the baseline. How much artesian head there was, and this says that 72% of that is still there in 2070 in Lost Pines and the Carrizo. And then in the other districts, you can see the various numbers. Simsboro, similar kind of thing, area weighted 2070, average artesian head as a percentage of 2010. In 2070, 79% of the artesian head is still there in 2070, but was there in 2010 in Lost Pines. Now you can see here that Rose Valley, Lost Pines, and Post Oak are all kind of similar. Giddings, Texas, and Fayette are they're different worlds. But the three big districts, these are all kind of the same.
So earlier, you had stated that 240 feet of drawdown was our current DFC. So the 79% equates to 240 feet of drawdown is an alternative way
It's a different way
of expressing that 240 feet of drawdown.
Exactly.
An alternative way of expressing that is we'll have 79% of remaining artesian head
Correct.
in the year 2070.
This
It's
is
just an
just-
alternative way
it's
of
a-
expressing 240.
It's a different way of churning the numbers out of the box.
Not 70% of 240. Because
Okay.
people could confuse that.
79% of the water level that was there in 2010. Yeah, 79%.
Okay, so the 240, is that the 11 or the 21%?
No, it's the 240 is the average drawdown from 2010 to 2070.
Right.
That's over here. Over here, there was a certain amount of artesian head in 2010. Now there's 79% of that in 2070.
Okay.
So it's a different metric.
Gotcha.
It's a different way of processing the output of. Okay, so at 79%, that's based on the entire model. What about wells? What about wells that we know where they are, the registered wells in the database? I had access to 158 registered wells in the Carrizo and 208 registered down dip wells in the Simsboro and Lost Pines. And you can see the statistics of how much was there. Go to the next slide. So basically in the, one more. So the 72% in the Carrizo for the whole district of the wells that we have locations on, registered wells, it's more like 50%. And for the Simsboro, the 79% translates to 58%. Now that's because the whole area has a lot of areas where there aren't many wells, deep areas. So this is probably a better expression of the areas that have already been developed of what it will look like. So again, the numbers are different because the area we're looking at is different. Just another way of expressing.
Yeah, that's because the 72% or the 79%, let's stick with Simsboro, that's district-wide average.
Correct.
But now you're looking at wells, so they're more in the shallower parts,
Developed area.
in the developed area. So it's a geographic difference.
Correct. Yeah. Is that the next one? Yeah. So now here's another one. This is something Jim has wanted to do for years, literally. We talked about this over the years. So what I did was I called scenario one, the base case, the S19 simulation. And now using this approach, what I did is say, okay, let's turn off all the non-exempt pumping. Only the exempt pumping is included. All the exempt pumping in S19 stays on, and everybody else's pumping all around Lost Pines stays on. And then I also looked at it on a layer by layer basis. So scenario 3 was I turned the smart off to the permitted wells. All the way down to scenario 8, which is just the Hooper wells that were turned off, the permitted wells that were turned off. I'm sorry, non-exempted permitted are the same thing. I get sloppy sometimes. I apologize. Go ahead. Okay, so I started using the database of registered wells includes the non-exempt and the permitted. Well, that didn't match up too well with the S19 pumping. So I tried a bunch of different ways and I never got something that was satisfactory in terms of how much permitted pumping there is versus exempt pumping. So I talked to Jim, I said, we gotta fix the S19 later on. That's a task that has to be done at some point. So what I did is say, okay, if pumping in a cell is greater than 45 acre-feet a year, I'm assuming that's a permitted well. And if it's less than 45 acre-feet a year, I'm gonna assume it's accepted well. And then I do layer by layer results and report on all. So this is sort of a breakdown of exempt well pumping by threshold or by layer with a 45 acre-foot per year threshold. And that's the non-exempt well. It's dominated obviously by the Simsboro. Yes. So what we're going to do here is compare scenarios 1 and 2. Scenario 1 is the base case, S19. Scenario 2 is where all the non-exempt pumping is turned off in Lost Pines. And so we take the pumping in 2070, it goes from 106,000 all the way down to 12,000. So there's about 12,000 acre-feet of pumping, exempt pumping in the district of 7. So the blue bars are what we just saw, the 79%. Turn everything off, it pops up to 93%. You'll notice the other districts, they don't change all that much. So it's interesting that you turn off all the permanent wells in Lost Pines, you bring it back up to 93%, but it doesn't have that big of an effect on neighboring districts.
That tells you that the pumping in the Lost Pines is not affecting the other districts.
Yeah.
So this is the predicted, yeah, this is the predictive future.
So then I broke this down and did each aquifer individually, layer by layer. And I just have a couple of examples here. This is the Calvert Bluff. And you can see that when you turn everything off, when you turn them, Calvert Bluff, when everything's on at S19 at 70%. When you turn everything off, it bumps up to 86%. And when you just turn the Simsboro off, it's 83%. So this shows that interconnection between the Calvert Bluff, the Hooper is a similar thing. Calvert Bluff, Simsboro, and Hooper are all very well connected. And go to the Simsboro one. So we can see that 79 turns to 93 when everything's turned off. But when you only turn the Simsboro off, it's at 92. So again, the Simsboro is the pumping that really dominates everything. And you can see all the others. You can turn off the Sparta, Queen City, Carrizo, all that. They all stay at about 79. So one of the key takeaways that we've talked about this over the last many months, the Wilcox Aquifer units are all interconnected pretty strongly. Calvert Bluff, Simsboro, and Hooper. And then the fact that the Artesian Head provides some opportunities when we look at this impacts across district lines. as we'll see in the next presentation, sometimes that drawdown number paints a picture that may not be completely accurate or at least as comprehensive as other ways. So you want to look at things different ways. And this artesian head, I think, gives you a much better metric to look at. Now, whether this is something GMA 12 buys into, kind of irrelevant. Because as a district, you have the opportunity to adopt a DFC at a district level. As long as it's consistent with what GMA 12 does, we can look at it here differently and think about it differently, whether GMA 12 goes along with it or not. So with that, I'll have another one, but that's a separate item. So if there's any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer them.
Not sure this is a question, you know, for others. So they get to the votes for the next year's round of DFCs. How does this impact that we can do it differently? Will we be able to do it differently from them? Or will we be trying to persuade them to go with this idea as well?
We don't have to. We can go with this idea. Again, it's just a different.
Why is it on?
Sure.
Because I was about to do with the new city does.
Yeah,
So they want to go to 350. But just for.
yeah. At the GMA 12, we can discuss based on drawdown numbers.
Yeah.
The key thing is that any of these DFCs are going to be based on model. So if your example is a good one, they come in, they say Lost Pines could be 350. Everyone goes, what does that mean? Well, this is another way to take that model output, process it, and see what it means in the context of artesian head, registered well database, all the different ways. My assumption is that y'all are interested in what it means to you when one of these runs comes in. And this is part of the toolbox that we can then look at and evaluate and not get hung up on one. Basically, without this, you have one number to think about and talk about. And what's it mean?
Yeah, so this is like an addition to the S19 basic one.
The S19 run, whether it's S19 or S20 or S30 or whatever they come up with, anytime Jim has a run, sends it to me, I can process it through this and spit numbers out like you've just seen. That's kind of the point, is that you have the opportunity to look at it beyond what just a drawdown.
I understand that we can do differently within our district, just looking at how it impacts the GMA process.
And that's part of the
5
big
year.
deal, is if the 330 or 350 or whatever comes up with it, we start seeing things that are troublesome. We're not going up and saying, we just don't like 350.
Right.
There's a reason for that relative to our registered wells, our mitigation program, whatever.
That makes perfect sense.
I didn't see that we needed to make any drastic change at this point. We could just use this as another tool in the toolbox. Because when you say, 240, there's no reference points. You don't know whether is that good, is that bad.
No.
But when you express it in terms of percentage, there's a reference point. It's the water level in the year 2010. That's the reference point. And now when you see 79%, it's like, oh, okay, there's 79% left. It just communicates it. I believe it expresses it with a little bit more information behind that. It's better to understand for your.
Absolutely, because you're
public.
using real data of water levels, whereas just a GAP run, putting everybody's permits in is not based on any real data. It's just based on your permits.
So the next
And
presentation.
we'll get into this a little bit more in the next
Okay.
presentation, because it's sort of a dry run of something new and different.
Very good.
So this started out about 18 months ago. Dr. Hutchison presented alternative methods to the board. And then about a year ago, or 13 months ago, he presented this to the GMA 12. And so this is this alternative method that the GMA 12 discussed it for several months. And then we decided to forge ahead and we told Dr. Hutchinson to provide this analysis.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Hutchison on this topic? All right, then I guess we'll move to the next agenda item. So then, it'll be, regular agenda item 4D. This will be the presentation by Dr. Hutchinson regarding the Brazos Valley Groundwater Conservation District Impact Report. If you recall, about 3 months ago or so, we showed the latest Brazos Valley model run. They last year granted about 192,000 new acre feet of permits in the Simsboro. And so we asked Dr. Hutchinson to analyze those impacts to the district as a result of those new permits from last year.
Great introduction. Okay, go to the top slide here. Okay, so to kind of just reiterate what Elvis just said, we talked about S19, that's the current GAM simulation. The initial piece of permits were approved in the Carrizo and the Simsboro. AGS, who's here, by the way, did a presentation, PowerPoint presentation in January. Jim got a hold of it. There were some questions, asked me about it. And after a couple of iterations, we got 120 location details of 129 wells that were not in S19 that represent these new permits. So there's 7 of them, pumping about 7,600 acre feet, and in the Simsboro, it's 122 wells, pumping over 190,000 acre feet. There they are, all their glory. The red ones are the Carrizo wells, the blue ones are the Simsboro. So this is pretty simple, and it goes along with what Carol was saying. This is sort of an example of how you would go about this. S19 is the starting point. Let's add these wells in, see what happens. And so we're looking at changes in average drawdown, the traditional way. Contour maps, that's another traditional way. Impacts to artesian head, that's what I just talked about. Sources of that increased pumping, the groundwater budget stuff that we've done on all the permit applications the last year or so. And then what are the effects on the registered wells in Lost Pine? So here's the assumed pumping. S19 is the blue line in Brazos Valley, and the red line is Brazos Valley S19 plus this new pumping. Now, this is a little different than what AGS did. AGS had it ramped up differently, and I was like, that's a detail that's probably not that critical to drawing the big conclusions that we were interested in.
And that's real important. If you could just expand upon that. Sure. On the benefits or negatives of doing it your method, where you just put in all the permits and analyze it.
So in the GMAs I work with, we don't do a lot of ramping. It seems kind of, to me, it doesn't add anything, because you're having to assume some rate of increase when ultimately what you're interested in is what happens in 2080. Now, many years ago, I ran some tests on that, of whether you ramped it up or just put it all in at the front, and it was a straight, amount of pumping for the entire simulation. The results are a little bit different, but not that much. So when you're dealing with tens, if not hundreds of feet of drawdown, ramping it up or having a constant rate of pumping is not going to create numbers that are so different that you would draw different conclusions. And so it's just a lot easier just to put it in and keep it consistent. So you can see that the ramp up that's built into the S19, the red line is simply that much higher than the blue line. But I'm just adding it in from day one. So the average drawdown in S19 is the upper table. The lower table is S19 plus these new permits for each district. And go to the next slide. The table's hard, but this is the little graph. So you can see in Brazos Valley, the Simsboro goes from 170 some down to over 400. These These are all the aquifers within Lost Pines. And we can see it's 240, and the way I calculate it, it's a little higher than that, which is not terribly important. But you can see that it drops down to almost 350. Now, this is where you would normally stop. It's 350. Oh my God, what does that mean? Right? Okay, so that's where we want to get it. And you can see that Pepper Bluff and the Hooper are also, affected. Carrizo not so much. Queen City and Smyrna not really at all. So here's our contour maps. This is the Carrizo. You can see where the bullets are, where the bullseye is, where the new Carrizo wells would go, and how far they would expand out.
This is the S19, so this is the current situation, so that would be Vista Ridge.
That's the Vista Ridge.
That's the bullseye.
That's the Vista Ridge bullseye.
Yep.
And the next slide is S19 plus S19 for Simsboro. And again, you can see the bullseye around
Vista Ridge again, yeah, little most, but there's others.
that bullseye is at 570 feet. Now we're in the, 572 feet. Now it's a 600-foot bullseye in the Carrizo, and it's still targeted in the Vista Ridge area. Simsboro, now the bullseye shifts over to this new pumping in Bronzes Valley. Those red circles, there's a little bullseye over there, minor bullseye, still in Vista Ridge.
So now the bullseye shifted up to College Station, Brooklyn.
Right. Now, this is the attributable drawdown. So this is the difference between those two for the Carrizo. And you can see the maximum is 174 feet right in that area. Simsboro, it's the maximum 585 feet spread out in that Overton. And this is zoomed in portion with the well opening. And you can see it's obviously it gets into Miles County, but it's largely in Robertson and Robinson County. But we've seen the artesian head from the previous presentation. So we can see in the Carrizo, Bronzes Valley, it drops from 86 to 76. In Post Oak, it drops from 71 to 62. But in Lost Pines, it only goes from 72 to 68, not a huge difference. There's also about a 4-point drop in Mid-East Texas. In Fayette County, the bottom. Simsboro, 79 to 74. But compared to Bronzes Valley and Post Oak, that's fairly minor. And in terms of Mid-East Texas and Fayette, not much of a difference. Just a little map shows where EMA 12 is and all the districts that we're dealing with. Okay, so this is the water budget for the Carrizo Wilcox. With S19 or the calibrated model of S19 to see what the differences are. And you can see that in Lost Pines, there's an increase in pumping of 65,000, a decrease in storage. The storage just sets the stage for the next one. This is the Carrizo Wilcox for Brazos Valley. And you can see that S19 actually starts capturing a lot of that outflow. Remember, we have the induced outflow and the captured outflow of the storage change. And you can see that in the calibrated model, there's a lot of natural outflow components that are basically gone under S19 and A. Now, when you get into the S19 plus BV, now you can start doing the analysis of where the water's coming from. So we see that in the Carrizo Wilcox overall, the increase in pumping is about 200,000 acre feet. And we can see that only 24% of that is coming out of storage in Brazos Valley. And 43% of that water, that additional pumping, is coming from Post Oak. 17% is coming from the shallow flow system from the outcrop areas. Bounce from vertical, Texas and all that. Now, Lost
Well,
Pines,
can you just go back 1 second? So I just wanted to highlight that again, I just want to reiterate. So when folks produce water from the Brazos Valley, Simsboro, and they pump water from the Brazos Valley, Simsboro, only 24, little over 24% of that actually originates from the Brazos Valley, Simsboro. 75.93% of that water pumped from the Brazos Valley, Simsboro does not originate in the Brazos Valley, Simsboro. Well,
the only caveat to that is not just the Simsboro. 24% comes from the Simsboro, County, and Carusa.
right, yeah,
The rest of it comes from the outcrop area, Post Oak, Savannah,
yeah,
Grimes County.
43% of when you produce water from Brazos Valley, Simsboro, 43% of that is actually originating in the Post Oak, Savannah, Simsboro.
No, it's Post Oak, Savannah
In general, okay, so it could be any of
It's dominated by
Dominated.
the Carrizo Wilcox, but
Okay,
to be precise,
okay,
I didn't break it out. Post Oak was Post Oak.
gotcha.
I loved all that.
All right, so it's all of them. And then a significant amount is coming from the shallow flow system, 17.5%.
Right.
Yeah, all right.
So
Thank you.
that, the shallow flow system is within Brazos Valley.
Yeah.
And so we do the same kind of analysis on Lost Pines with S19 and S19 plus BV. And you can see here, the pumping actually goes down, which says that the model actually, as the water levels go down and a well can't keep pumping, this is over water. That shows that 47 acre feet of pumping cannot happen under this scenario. We'll go to the next slide. This gets into this available drawdown on a well basis when we're looking at the registered well database. Right? So there's 3,513 registered wells. As of the time I did this, only 52% of them were using. This is cleaning up the rest. There's coordinate issues, depth issues, all kinds of stuff. So of the 52% I've got, go to the next one. Oh yeah, this goes through all the drawdown artesian head stuff. Go to the next one. So this is how the well depths are of those wells. So you can see most of them, this is a frequency diagram. So most of them are in the 300 to 600 foot range. There's a few deep ones, obviously. And a few shallow ones, but most of them are in that range. This is the artesian head in 2010. Most of them have an artesian head in the 100 to 200 range. A few with a whole lot. Available drawdown by well. Most of them have between 250 and maybe 400 feet of available drawdown. So based on that available drawdown of the well, 31 of the wells have a negative available drawdown. They're dry wells in 2010 based on the model. Now that could be model limitation. That could be wells that have been registered that truly are dry. Those are on the average 77-foot well. So sensitive wells to be sure. 51 of the wells have between 0 and 30 feet of available drawdown. Those wells have an average depth of 90 feet. So for our purposes here, I'm going to ignore those 82 wells because that's where it gets complicated. These wells are probably not realistic in terms of model output. Let's go to the next one. So in S19, 19 of the wells in 2070 will have negative available product. That suggests dry wells. Those wells' average depth are 245 feet. 38 of the wells will have available drawdown less than 30 feet. That's where you start wondering if they really could keep pumping. Those have an average depth of 176 feet. So we can see that under S19, there's more than a few wells that would go dry by 20% in Lost Ponds. If we add the Brazos Valley pumping to that scenario, no more wells will go dry, but 3 will have a drawdown, available drawdown less than 30 feet, and those wells average 121 feet. So any damage that's being done to Lost Pines wells is being done by S19. And the Brazos Valley pumping isn't really adding anything additional to that. And that's the full 200,000 acre foot of permits, which I understand they're not gonna recommend for the DFC part, so it'll be something less than that probably. So obviously the pumping increase is relatively small to Carrizo and quite large at the Simsboro. Obviously, the biggest impacts are going to be in Brazos Valley. Impacts on Post Oak seem to be big, and they're really not that big in Lost Pines, probably in Middle East Texas either. Fayette is not really part of this. The aquifers there are very deep, and so there's no real impact there. And so this sort of gives you a flavor how you would go about looking at one of these model runs, one of these proposals, and say, does this make any sense? Do you have any better way of sort of balancing out the impacts amongst the 3 main districts in GMA 12? This is just another way of looking at it.
Okay. Any questions? Board. So there's an upcoming GMA 12 meeting this Friday. We should definitely plan on giving this out to the GMs at the GMA 12 on Friday, and electronically and hard copies we should have for the other GCDs too.
It's not on the agenda yet, though, right?
There is agenda items on DFC, yeah, and alternative methods, yeah, that's all on the agenda, so this should be able to be brought up if needed.
And when we went through the planning session on this, Elvis is more than capable of giving this presentation. Because when we were reviewing it, he actually it was actually a good way to sort of edit it in my own head. I was so impressed with how well you were able to sort of give my presentation. GMA 12 is in good hands. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Hutchison. With that, we will move to regular agenda item 4E. Speaking about the GMA 12, this discussion, consideration, and possible action on the GMA 12 cost sharing and updates to the DFC. I had been focusing the last several months on the GMA 12. I represented the Lost Pines at the last GMA 12 meeting, and because I had created an action item list, and I wanted to represent that work at the GMA 12. A few of the upcoming items that we need to provide guidance to Mr. Totten for Friday's meeting is regarding cost sharing and potential updates to the DFC. As we spoke about this last meeting regarding cost sharing, where I had proposed equal share amongst the 5 GCDs. The 2 smaller GCDs had proposed proportional based on budget, annual budget. My understanding is that the Post Oak board discussed this item recently, and they felt that the 5 budget was not going to work for them. That they would have to front, the bulk of like something like 65% would that be on the burden of Post Oak. So they wanted to do more of a third. The thought being is that the big 3, the Brazos Valley, Lost Pines, and Post Oak, we have the 3 biggest aquifers, and it's our work and our pumping and our model runs that really cause a lot of the additional work. And so, I know Brazos Valley also, gave the recommendation to their GM to go up to 33% as well. And Post Oak, last they left it, was about, they would accept 33% as well. So, that's what we're here today to discuss the different cost sharing options and to give direction to Mr. Totten on cost sharing for Friday's meeting.
Will they reimburse us for our mitigation expenses for all the Vista Ridge impacts and then they can pick up their share?
You know, that's separate.
Well, I had to ask.
Yeah, that's very separate. So that's a separate item,
No, it's
so,
not.
but, well, so, so I know some suggestions were 33%, but then that leaves, you know, very little for the other two GCDs. They would only have 0.5%. I know there was some discussion at the governance committee that maybe it should be maybe more like 30. And the other two GCDs split the remaining 10%. Anyway, this will be brought up on Friday, and we just need to give Jim some direction as to what our board would be willing to entertain in terms of cost sharing.
Okay, can I ask 30%? 30% of what, or 33% of how much?
Yeah, on Friday, so Brazos Valley offered up their consultant AGS to lead this cycle. This is for, and cost sharing is regarding the edit, like being the editor of the explanatory report. Every 5-year cycle, when we vote on a new DFC, the GMA 12 creates an explanatory report that's also sent to the Texas Water Development Board. And so it's the the editor functions of creating that explanatory report that is the cost sharing. To get everybody's input from all the different GCDs, compile it, edit it, get the information from the state, put that into report. And so Brazos Valley has offered up their consultant to take the lead editorial. And on Friday, is my understanding, they will have a proposal for a budget for what it's going to cost, an expense proposal.
So we don't have any idea what the.
What's
we
it
don't know
cost in
what the
gas?
cost.
Yeah,
I don't know if we can vote on it if we don't know what the total amount of money
Yeah.
is.
In previous cycles, it was around 700,000.
no, but that was,
That's over the 5-year, that's over all districts over 5 years.
So say it's $1 billion, then 1/3 would be
no,
300,000.
well, what was discussed at the Brazos Valley board meeting last month was that it was going to be on the order of maybe 100,000 or so. In that,
1/3 is gonna be 100,000.
well, we only have 2 years left, so keep in mind,
Oh, you're talking about 2 years only?
we only have 2 years left in the cycle.
So the other past 3 years are already paid for.
Nothing happened.
Okay.
There was nothing, they didn't do anything to warrant an expense.
Okay.
So there has been no shared expense in the last 2.5.
I mean, aside from individual model runs that are paid for by the district, yeah, by the individual districts, there hadn't been anything that.
How to go from 700,000?
The 700,000 was 5 years.
Yep.
And that was kind of starting from scratch. They were doing a lot of model runs because of the S19. So there was a lot of work, but now we're starting with the S19 as our baseline. So there should be less work moving forward. And we're not, it's not a whole 5-year cycle. We're really looking, we're already 2.5 years into that cycle. So
So just to make sure, 2 years, 900,000, is that what you're saying?
No,
no.
Say it again.
I don't know where you heard 900,000.
Well, maybe I misunderstood you.
What I heard at the Brazos Valley board meeting was that it might be on the order of 100,000.
100,000, I must have misheard.
Well, if it's as small as 100,000, couldn't we do 25, 25, and 25 and let the other two pick up
That's what,
12.5%? I mean, of 100,000, that's not much.
No, it's, I can't remember what your budget's on.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. if they're-
but on Friday, we should have a better number. This is just a ballpark, but just to give a ballpark, but Friday, we should have a number from Brazos Valley.
The cost.
A cost, estimate, an expense estimate. Right now, our proposal was 20% across the board. And then the smaller guys, they percent based on budget, but Post Oak kind of didn't like that.
The small guys proposed that?
Yeah, yeah, the smaller, yeah. So we had been doing a round robin approach in these past cycles. So we're in our fourth cycle right now. The first cycle was led by Brazos Valley, and they led and paid for everything. Then Post Oak in the second cycle, they led this effort and they paid for it entirely. And then last cycle, the Lost Pines led this effort of being the editor, and we paid for everything. So it really was the turn of one of the other smaller guys, and now they're proposing a new method, a cost sharing way of doing things.
What's your sense, Jim?
We can walk out tonight with a range that I can operate in. I think we can come to a deal and put all this behind us at the next meeting. I know previous discussion from the board, y'all said 20%, because that'd be a flat cut between everybody. So if we make 20% the floor and then come up with a maximum of 25, 30, 33, however y'all want to set that maximum, then I think that gives us a room to work out a solution that, you know, we can all live with and get this behind us, move down the road.
This has been on the GMA 12 agenda for 2 years now.
I'd say up to 30.
Knowing that the other two districts are saying 33%, that leaves a little bit left over for the two smaller districts. But whatever y'all are comfortable with in terms of our assigned costs, I just need to know what my boundaries are when we try and get this resolved.
Do all the districts benefit equally from the work that's being done?
Yes, all groundwater districts do benefit equally. I believe, though, that the three big groundwater districts kind of, a lot of the work is because of our pumping and our aquifers. So, but everyone benefits equally, I think, at the end of the day. But we do generate most of the work.
I make a motion that we allowed Jim to negotiate up to 30%. And cost sharing.
Motion to allow, to give direction for up to 30% made by Director Arsufi and seconded by Director Phillips. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so with that, Jim, there's your direction.
That means start at 20.
Yeah, 20 to 30.
Yeah, 15, start at
Don't
15.
start at 30.
But like I said, we just need a range we can work in.
They're probably listening on the phone right now.
Well, I mean,
That's fine.
yes, yeah, they can watch us the same way we can watch them, so no secret.
Okay, so the next item then for discussion, there's actually 3 things that we need to give Jim direction on. That was the first. The next is regarding the DFCs. So basically, again, we need to give Jim some direction regarding the DFCs. Right now, in October, the GMA 12 voted to use the current S19 as the preliminary DFCs. And so if they started this past cycle since October, evaluating the 9 factors based upon the current S19 DFCs. So that was voted on in October by the GMA 12. It was unanimous to use the current DFCs as the preliminary DFCs. So I believe we need to give Jim direction to say, should he continue to proceed that way and continue to use the current DFCs as our preliminary DFCs, or do we as a board, do we believe the DFCs need to increase for some reason? Right now, we've only had really one large permit in the last 3 years, and that being the gatehouse that was reinstated. That's really been the only regional permit that could be big enough to have regional impacts is gatehouse. So we really just have one additional permit to add to our pumping file. The situation on the ground is that Recharge hasn't started production, LCRA has not started production, Gatehouse hasn't started production. Recharge, we've been waiting for many years, or, I guess the assumption in the S19 is that Recharge and LCRA would start in the year 2026.
Yes, yeah.
So that assumption may change. They haven't started, and so they probably aren't gonna start in a year and a half.
They're acquiring right of ways.
Question, what other options would we have if we did not select S19?
So S19 is the starting point.
Yeah, what other options would we have if we didn't? I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm for it, yes.
So the process that we've gone through, we started with S19, which was already the pre-approved DFCs from the last cycle. We're reevaluating that set of DFCs and going through the 9 factors again, looking at what's changed since the DFCs were adopted. So that gives us a starting point to go, okay, this is what we've already adopted. These are the conditions that have changed, and therefore these are the things that may need to be adjusted in the next round of DFCs. So we'll complete that under the schedule that I've developed and I'm taking back to the GMA. We'll complete that process of those 9 factor evaluations, at the end of this year. And then that will lead into, okay, what changes do need to be made? Do we need to bump up or do we need to bump down? What, based on the factors that have been evaluated, what changes do we need to make to that previous DFC?
So no reconsideration of like S20? That's not on the table?
It hasn't come up.
Could it be?
S20.
I'm just trying to.
Well, can you refresh my memory on S20?
Pardon?
Can you refresh my memory on S20?
It was the other model that was presented by environmental stewardship. And
The one that required throwing out all export permits and cutting local production by 1/3 to achieve?
I don't recall
I
the
believe that was it.
details, but I'm just using that as an example.
Yes, ma'am.
So
That-
is S19 the primary decision
The S19,
making?
the S19, it was, again, that was the previous DFCs. So we started reevaluating the previous DFCs in the context of the current environment. What's changed in terms of aquifer conditions and uses? What's changed in terms of all the other 9 factors we have to evaluate? That's the process we're just coming to the end of. And based on that, we can start looking at other alternatives. But that was the starting point to do the evaluation.
It doesn't give much time after the end of the year. I'm not blaming anybody.
No, well,
Just
we
the fact.
didn't expect the entire process to stop for 6 months at the end of last year. So that kind of threw a wrench in it.
Thank you.
Some of the benefits of keeping the DFC is that, the current explanatory report was already written, using the existing DFCs. In the past, we had public comments on the existing DFCs. And, so there's some work that's kind of the foundation that's already kind of been laid in place. So it,
That's helpful. That
That-
kind of was where I was.
yeah, so that it helps to, that would be a reason for,
But right now, there's no drastic new information that would cause anybody to change from S19.
on,
That's my point now.
I think that would be a correct statement for our district.
Okay.
Brazos Valley is going to be recommending a new proposal.
Oh, they are.
Yes, at their last board meeting a couple of weeks ago, they had a new model run, which would have them increase their DFC in the Simsboro to 340. And they gave the direction to their general manager to present at the GMA 12 this new proposed DFC. That if you take a look at their proposal, if you have that, it's in the other slide deck. If you've got that one by any chance. Yeah, the third, go down, yeah. So if this is kind of a little small, but this is the Brazos Valley best estimate scenario that they just approved. Or they didn't, they gave direction to their general manager to present this to the GMA 12. And this just happened last week, last month. So their proposal is to increase to 329, and that implies that we would have to increase our Simsboro, for example, from 240 to 290. So they're going to be proposing this new DFC, and they will be proposing an increase to their DFCs.
Have any feedback on how Post Oak feels about that?
Well, I can tell you that Post Oak, a couple of months ago, they gave direction to, their GM to continue with the current DFCs.
Very good.
And,
So they can probably get
so again, the goal right now for this discussion is to give Jim direction in terms of, do we as a board, from the Lost Pines perspective, do we have a need to, or to increase the DFCs? Or continue and give Jim direction to just continue evaluating with the current DFCs.
yeah, okay, now that I can understand that.
And if we can take one step back prior to that, if I can get direction regarding updating the pumping file. to
That'll be
include-
next.
Oh, so we'll do that next.
Yeah, I separated that in my mind.
I was doing it the other way in mine, so. go ahead.
Okay. But yeah, what Jim is bringing up is that, we do need to update our pumping file. We do need to add gatehouse back into our pumping file. That is currently not in the pumping file, the gatehouse.
Public turf grass, aqua.
Common turf grass, the aqua, the city of Bastrop from like 3 years ago. There's about 5 permits that have been granted in the last 3 years. Most of them are almost, 3,000 acre feet or less. The big one is gatehouse. So we need to add those. We also need to change the start date of some of these permits. Recharge still hasn't started. LCRA still hasn't started. So those start dates may need to be pushed out as well in the model run. So we do need to update our pumping file.
Although, based on what Dr. Hudson said earlier, it may not make a difference. We may just put everything in.
Put everything in.
Rather than trying to guess about when they come online or how they ramp up. So if you'll allow me to work with Bill to add in these new, the existing permits and kind of, I guess if we keep it a little bit general on how we optimize that pumping file, that may make it a little bit easier.
Bill?
If you recall, in one of the slides, I talked about S19 matching it up with our database. It does match up very well right now. So I think aside from all these conditions, a little bit of time set aside to make sure that whatever the pumping file has is consistent with the database that Vince is wrapping up, I think would be beneficial for everything.
Is that the issue of exempt versus non-exempt that you brought up earlier? Okay.
But it also highlighted that I don't think some of the locations, the S19 pumping in all locations are correct relative to what Jim has in the same things. So we need to
Clean that up and add the new
and add the
permits
new ones.
and change the starting assumptions for recharge and.
Yeah. I don't have any objection to changing the start dates because there are some administrative advantages that all I'm saying is from a analytical standpoint, it's not gonna make that much difference in the end. So.
Yeah, because we are asking the same of all the GCDs, right? We're gonna be asking not that only that of ourselves, but we're gonna be asking Brazos to please add in all of their known permits into their proposal. Because this proposal right now is excluding about 140,000 acre feet of new Brazos Valley permits. They're not in this proposal. So just to be aware that their proposal. Yeah, Vince wanted it. Come on up, Vince. Yeah, you have something to add.
Just regarding the database update, we were scrubbing the state database for that information. And so regarding some of these well locations that Bill discussed here, it might make more sense to go back to some of those source permit documents and just cross-reference those. We should have about 55 of them maybe in terms of those non-exempt wells that we want to go back and cross-reference in terms of those large pumpers.
I think that's what Bill said, yeah.
But that's what I would recommend is to go actually confirm those elsewhere too, because we could be replicating someone else's mistake in that state database as well. So just as another QA check here, that's my recommendation.
Thank you. We'll do that. Okay, so regarding the pumping file, it seems like we're all in agreement that we need to update the pumping file, address those concerns that Dr. Hutchinson has regarding the exempt pumping and update that pumping file. So
do we need a motion for the DFC for?
I think the motion would be appropriate to give Jim direction on the DFC.
I move that, Jim, go with our current, DFCs in negotiations with, GMA 12.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to continue with the current DFCs as our preliminary DFCs from Director Sufi, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, you got that. And then regarding the pumping file, I don't think we needed any action on that, just.
I just wanted it on the record that we discussed it and we will update it to
Yeah,
reflect
we will
all our
update.
current permits.
Yes, because I did state that to the GMA 12 that we would be updating our file, our pumping file. And that has been requested by the general manager of Broadwood Valley, and we will be doing that. Okay? Any other questions on this item? All right, then we will move on to item 4F. Review and discussion regarding draft new rules for an October 16th rules hearing. So we've reviewed one of the rules in our past meeting, the groundwater management zone for Northern Lee County. We reviewed that rule, but we have about a few other rules that the management committee has worked on. And we are planning a rules hearing for October 16th to coincide with our regular board meeting. So with that, Mr. Salegi, would you like to guide us through the new rules?
Thank you, President. It should be around page 146 of your packet. As Elvis said, the management committee's been working through this for the last couple of months, with legal counsel. So starting at rule 5.1B, the operating permit application, we're going to move existing number 13, make that number 14. And the new number 13 will be the estimated average annual production amount in acre feet per year. That's what's proposed for that.
And so this is just to add it to the permit, the average annual production amount, so that when they apply, they provide this number to us. This way we can compare apples to apples across all the permit applications.
This was intended to address a mismatch where we would have a request for a certain amount of acre feet and a certain instantaneous rate. And the only way you could make those two numbers work is if the well ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this is an attempt to try and bring those numbers back a little bit more realistic, down to reality.
Moving on, the next is going to be rule 9.2, groundwater management zone creation. Using the best hydrogeologic and other relevant scientific data readily available, the board may create certain management zones within the district based on geographically or hydrogeologically defined areas, aquifers, or aquifer subdivisions. So here, they, in part B, really define the groundwater management zone as the district shall attempt to define GMZ by each aquifer, subdivision of an aquifer, or geologic strata, each geographic area overlying an aquifer or subdivision of an aquifer within the district's boundaries, that to the extent practicable will promote fairness, efficiency by the district in its management of groundwater resources. So that's for the creation of the groundwater management zones, 9.2.
So this was the one rule that we did review a couple board meetings ago. This would create the groundwater zone in the Northern Lee County area, the area with the Tanglewood Graben, where earlier Vince's report from several months ago showed that he had a report of the available remaining artesian head. He showed that in certain parts of Northern Lee County, there's about 100, in some cases, 100 feet of available drawdown left or less. And so we've shared with the public in the past the boundary lines, which would be Highway County Road 405 on one side and 112 on to the west, and then the county lines, the Milam County line and the Burleson County line. So that this would be Great Groundwater Zone 1 for the Northern Lee County affected area by that's affected by the grab in conjunction with Mr. Ridge.
But that's 9.6.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you were still at
Typically.
9. Okay, I jumped
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah, there's the threshold. Everything is in support of that 9.6.
That's,
So-
that rule is for the creation.
Yeah, that creates it. And then the following rules that have the threshold levels in support of the zone in 9.6 of that area. And so we have 3 threshold levels, starting at 75%, 60%, and then 50%. And the goal would be to maintain at least 50% of the available remaining artesian head in this groundwater zone 1. These thresholds are very consistent with other GCDs, with what is done in other groundwater districts. Not much new in terms of these threshold values. Any questions on the GMZ rule? Okay. Mr. Beach, did you have a comment on the GMZ that you'd like to share with us, or you're okay?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Over 11.2.
Yes, please.
That sounds good. This will be an entirely new rule, for production limit metering and reporting. These are for well owners of an ag exempt well, where a well permitted under 5.2.c for production of 50 acre feet per year or less. This would require them to equip the well with a metering device to measure, compliance with existing permit production limits. Any such meter would have to be monitored for a year. They'd have to submit quarterly reports to the district based on that meter's readings. That's rule 11.2, a new rule 12.
Now, also want to state for everyone here that the management committee discussed in conjunction with this rule to create a grant program so that we can fund grants and help these folks to purchase their meters. So we're not just going to force them to buy meters. Our desire from the management committee would be that we would create a grant program so that they could buy the meters using that grant.
Next, we have rule 11.3 for lease certification requirements. This would also be a brand new rule. This rule requires people holding operating permits to annually certify and provide to the district documentation proving active leases that are granting them the right to produce groundwater. Proof of that valid groundwater lease establishes or maintains authorization to produce the permitted volume of groundwater granted by the lease. If the permittee's land acreage covered by those leases is less than the land acreage last demonstrated to the district, the board may reduce permitted production amount of groundwater in accordance with rule 9.1. Anything on that?
Jim, could you add some background as to the benefit of this rule?
So this really ties into the adoption of production limits, where we're now beginning to base permits based on the controlled surface acreage. And so if we're making permitting decisions based on controlled surface acreage, it's now incumbent upon us to verify that, especially if it's leased property, that those leases retain under control of the permittee throughout the life of the permit. So that's what drove this 11.3.
And so finally, we have new rule 11.4, defining service area, excuse me. A permittee that either holds a certificate of convenience and necessity, is a municipality or a special or municipal utility district within the district shall provide the district certified documentation showing the amount of acreage within the CCM or district actively receiving service from the permittee with groundwater produced from land within the district. So for purposes of these rules, that service is known as the actual service. A permittee's contiguous acres based on a CCN may be reduced to the amount of acreage within the CCN actually receiving actual service.
The district shall determine production limits in accordance with Rule 9.1 based on actual service provided by a CCN holder or special district.
Again, Mr. Todd, if you can provide some background on this.
Yes, sir. So really what this goes to, again, with the change in district rules to apply, controlled surface acreage as a defining element in permitting. The part of the rules that were adopted allowed for special utilities to use their CCN as part, to support their applications. And as we've kind of moved forward from that rule change, we've realized that that may have been a little too broad. And so what this rule does now is it looks at entities that have a CCN that have applied that, rather than being able to apply the entire CCN to their permitting, they can only apply the areas of land that they actually service within their CCN. So if you have an entity that's gobbled up, several 100,000 acres of land in Lee County, but they're only serving 5,000 acres of it. Well, then for permitting decisions, the 5,000 acres that they serve would be the basis for the decision. And part of what this would do is it will hopefully increase the desire to expand service area and get some of these areas that are currently under a CCN but don't have rural water service, to get those services to expand so that they can support more permits in the future.
So do you anticipate doing something like we do for leases? Or we're going to require them to send that information to us? Or how do you plan to proceed?
In this case, I think it would be done on it, as they come into, as one of these qualifying entities comes in to apply for new permits, we could conduct that evaluation then. I don't know that it needs to be done on an annual basis. I think it's unlikely to shrink. So you really come down to a question of growth over time. And so it would just be part of the evaluation as those entities come in. And if I can circle back for 1 second on the metering requirement. The rule specifically references 5.3B3, which is a standard condition in our permits. 5.3B3 does specify it's either a meter or a method approved by the district for evaluating the water produced. So I've already spoken with some landowners that have, an agricultural well that has its own dedicated power meter. We could develop a method of average instantaneous flow versus, watt hours consumed and work backwards. So this doesn't necessarily require everyone to cut their plumbing and install a flow meter. There are other ways we can get to this that may be a lower cost to landowners. But we'll try and develop some rough numbers for the hearing, kind of give an idea of cost and scale if we had everybody having to go and put in a 6-inch meter or something like that, just to help provide that. But I do want to make it clear that the rule does not specifically require that everyone has a flow meter. There could be other ways to solve that problem.
Good. Questions on the draft new rules? Again, the goal is to have, I believe it's already been published in the newspapers, for an October 16th rules hearing. That will be, we'll have that in conjunction with our regular board meeting on the 16th of October. All right, any other questions?
I would say on the Rule 9.6 that there's some corrections that need to be made because it's not County Road 77, it's State Highway 77, and the 696 is FM 96. 696.
Okay, thank you. So it's an FM 696.
And I think
And
Road
it's-
112 is also a farm to market.
It's farm to market is 112 and highway, it's a highway, State Highway 77.
Yes.
Okay. So that will have to be updated.
Yes. These will be published on
It's a US.
It's a state highway,
77.
77?
77.
What is the state?
Yeah, we'll fix it.
There's sections.
We'll fix it. Yes,
Yeah, these will be published on the 26th of this month. But they are available on the website. It's part of the agenda. It's loaded up there. So they are available.
right. So we'll update this and we'll get this the updates, the final version by the 26th on our website. All right, so you caught that we have to change the the state, the highways, and get them properly labeled. Yes, a couple of them are farm to market roads. Okay,
I think 77 is US highway.
it could be. Yeah, that's what Director Burgess just said. Yeah, the Director Burgess just said that the 77 might be a US highway. I didn't realize that. So, okay, we'll have,
Check it anyway.
we'll check it. We'll get it correct. Any other comments? All right, seeing none then, we will move on to item 4G, committee reports with possible board discussion. No action will be taken. The Financial Services Committee. Director Semang.
It's in here somewhere.
You got it handy if you need it.
He had meeting on the 9th of September. 3 o'clock. We had discussions. That went on until 4:20, and I don't think had anything to do with trying to get a budget. So I kind of changed the way we were going, and we got into the budget and should have copies of the post that we came. It's not a big budget because there are things that need further discussion. We're gonna have to get into. That's probably after this meeting, not tonight.
Yes, so we're working on the budget for next year, proposed budget for next year, and Mr. Totten is updating a proposed budget so that we can review it for next month.
The end of this month or early next month, yes, sir. We've got about $700,000 that we still have to slot in somewhere.
Right, so typically by the year end, we will need to have a 2025 budget, and we need to amend the 2024 budget. So we need to accomplish that either October or November board meeting.
We'll try to have the draft budget for the October board meeting.
And the final.
And then the final budget for the November board meeting, and then in December, we can do the amendments. That way we're not having to guess quite as much with regard to what amendments are needed. So yeah, the next 3 months, you'll hear a lot from us. But
Right. Yeah, because we typically do the amendments at the end of the current year. And then we need obviously the budget for next year. So we'll have both of that. All right, Governance Committee, we met on September 4th. Myself, Director Roger Semang, Natasha Martin, Bobby Salehi, and Jim Totten. Also in attendance were Vince Claus and Dr. Hutchinson. We reviewed the impact report and Dr. Hutchinson's presentation. Then Mr. Claus and Dr. Hutchinson dropped off and the meeting resumed. We talked about the computer codes and getting new computers for the district. So that's underway. We've talked about the October 16th rule hearing and to get that newspaper notice in. We were also told that the Rambo hearing examiner was for October, first week of October. That's been pinned down to October 2nd. And then, so we talked about getting a disclaimer to incorporate into the 3D model and working with our legal counsel to get a disclaimer that the LRE can add into the 3D copy for public use. We've been trying to get a gentleman to present on the Texas Water Development Board Springs Initiative. Hopefully we can plan for that in October. The GMA 12 will be meeting this Friday, and we discussed the need for cost sharing and updates to the pumping file, which we discussed today. The updates to the boring tool and the database are in progress. The boring tool was finalized and that's been all okayed on their test site. We discussed the Bureau of Reclamation. All systems are up and ready in terms of the grant, for the federal grant. So we're all ready to, I guess that'll start in the next few weeks or next month. And we should be getting some funds from the federal government or starting this Bureau Reclamation grant, which as you call is to refine our model and improve our model locally, the GAM model.
It's a pull system, so as they don't send us a check, we
Yeah.
submit to pull, yeah, pull funds
Submit.
from them, yeah.
Invoices that we pull from
Yes.
that account.
So,
All right, but that account's up and running and we're all ready for that, so everything's in place for the grant. And then we talked about the well intel units and possibly identifying some locations in terms of where we need these well intel units, where they would best fit in. We also spoke about becoming a Tag D sponsor for next year, and I believe Mr. Totten suggested even getting into a scholarship, a Tag D.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be scholarship, but it would be. Can you explain the Tag D?
So they refer to them as student scholarships for their summer conference. And so I've asked Claire to interact with the Alliance of Groundwater Districts, find out how that program operates and if there would be room for us to possibly put money in there. Rather, a lot of the groundwater district sponsorships, you get your name on the slides in between sessions, or you get, you know, your name on the badges that they give out. But we thought that in contributing to the student scholarship funds might actually be a more useful, better return on our money.
And they would sponsor.
Yeah, well, we'd still be a sponsor, but we would be directly sponsoring the scholarship funds. If that's a possibility, it gives us a place that, you know, we can actually make that, because a lot of y'all have gone to that conference, you've gotten a lot of great benefit from it. It'd be a way for us to make that more accessible to students and possibly bring in a new generation of people that are interested in working in water. So that's kind of what we're pursuing right now. We don't have any definitive answers in terms of cost or availability, but that made more sense than trying to get our, you know, our name slightly bigger on the logo than Post Oak Savannah or, you know, something like that. So that's.
Is Claire gonna be working on that, or you will, or both?
Claire, I've asked Claire, she's had some contact with the Alliance of Groundwater Districts lately.
Okay.
So I asked her to just continue that contact, carry that conversation forward. Once we get some details, we'll bring it back to the budget committee and start working on how to fund that for 2025.
Yeah, and that was just a thought that I had, because I attended for the first time this year, the Tag D, and I saw everyone, all the sponsors, and I figured, hey, why don't we get involved with that? So. And then we will need to schedule a mitigation stakeholder group for the mitigation stakeholder group. And Jim will be planning that upcoming. We committed to quarterly mitigation group meetings. So that will be planned for upcoming. And then we discussed getting some striping for the street, and in particular for handicap striping and a handicap parking sign. And I guess the city, I guess, told us that we have to pay for it.
Yes, sir.
So we contacted the city and the city said, well, yeah, that's a great idea, but you guys pay for it.
They recommended a vendor, but I'm sure they'll come by and tell us we did it wrong and we've got to do it again. But
Okay.
we're in the process of coordinating that.
And that's it for the governance committee. Next up, infrastructure committee.
Okay, the infrastructure committee met on September 10th. We met at 9 a.m. via Zoom and in person at the office. Attending were Nick Texter, Herb Cook, Tom Arsufi, Jim Totten, and myself. We discussed storage at the office, and Jim said that presently conditions were satisfactory and no extra storage was needed. We also discussed the parking striping. We still have a need for some landscaping, and Jim was talking about contacting an extension agent about xeriscaping plants, something we could do relatively inexpensively. The return of letters sent to possible well monitoring sites was discussed. So far, only 12 have been returned, or at least at that point. I don't know now. Natasha and Bobby were going to look at the letters, see if there's language that may be preventing returns that could be eliminated or changed. Alan Standen has looked at the network proposed and thinks we can reduce the number of wells to 105 from a little over 140. The well monitoring network cross-referencing of names, addresses, and well numbers is in progress. The well camera is on order. The water testing kit has been purchased and is in-house. Computers will be ordered as soon as there is a clearance on our credit cards, since Dell would not invoice them. Once purchased, they will need to be programmed before our use. And we discussed the fact that all aquifers are included in our well mitigation program with the stipulation that mitigation is needed because of the impact of production.
Education Outreach Committee, Director Smith.
Yes, just to note that this is actually a report from Claire Barks, our education coordinator, but since she cannot be with us, I have the pleasure of delivering this to you. September newsletter, Claire said, well, it's actually supposed to be October newsletter. Because she would like for you, all of the board members, to get copies of the newsletter. She would like to know by October the 15th, before October 15th, ideally, how many physical copies of the newsletter you would like so you can distribute them. Newspaper columns, I'm assuming many of you have seen the newspaper columns. She has a blog in the Lexington paper. And the September newsletter column was written about our well monitoring network and the well watch program. Stories were published about our LCRA suit dismissal. She kicked off a high school senior essay scholarship contest by sending letters, to principals, teachers, counselors, all types of people at all the high schools in Lee and Bastrop counties. I don't recall the number that she sent, but it was a lot. And so she's also asking for us, the board members, to please distribute flyers about the essay scholarship contest. The deadline for this high school seniors to submit it is around mid-November, and then the awards will be in December. Social media, reminding board members to follow at Lost Pines GCD and interact with posts to increase reach. We are now active on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Nextdoor. And she's had tremendous response on Nextdoor. Just incredible. I can't remember if she got 700 replies, was it? And just 24 or 48 hours on Nextdoor. Answering questions, it gives us information so we know what we need to educate the public about. It's wonderful. And then, of course, she has also created a social media policy, which has been distributed to the Education Committee. And we hope to perhaps have this on the agenda for next month. Upcoming dates to remember. September, she is partnering with Canada Extension Center. Originally it was supposed to be in Bastrop County, but it has been shifted to Lee County 4th grade water fair field days. The exact date should be announced any day. October 5th, tabling at the Smithville Sustainable Home and Garden Show. This year's theme is Water for Life. And Claire will actually be making a presentation during this meeting, which is great. This is an opportunity for board members to table. Bliss, I think you volunteered, right?
While during the period where she's going to
Okay.
be.
Yeah. Because I think basically we're just hoping that board members would volunteer for an hour, not the whole day. But we don't want everybody there at once because they don't have a quorum.
I think it's between 11:30 and.
No, it's 10 to 2.
No, I know, but hers
is 11:30. Yeah, when she has to do the presentation, it's 11:30.
Yeah, I said I cover.
It's not probably 15 minutes or less.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, she's just part of a bigger
Yeah,
presentation.
I think she's gonna hang there.
Yeah. But I think it's great to have board members attend and the public to meet you.
I could plan to be there.
Yeah, let
I
us
was gonna be
know.
there anyway. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's
let us know what hours.
We'll coordinate. I'll let her know that I already told her.
Oh, right. Very good. Very good. Okay. There's some time in October and November, again, partnering with Camu Ag Extension for a rainwater harvesting and extension workshop. November 10th, tabling at Bastrop County Local Food Fair. November 16th, presenting to Texas Master Naturalist on Groundwater 101. But that's it. She's doing a fantastic job.
I have a question. On the YouTube, what do you type in, like, on YouTube to find what she's done?
There's usually at YouTube a search field at the top, and you would just I'm assuming you just type in Lost Pines Groundwater District. I haven't tried to search for it myself, but that should be it, right? I don't use YouTube.
You would think that should work.
I'm not an expert. Yeah, I'm not an expert on YouTube. I rarely use it, but there is a search field at the top.
Well, we actually updated the district website. So just below the main buttons for the calendar and everything else, there's now 3 icons for Facebook, for social media. So the one that looks like a play button, if you click that, that should take you directly to our YouTube channel.
Right.
Save you the trouble of trying to search
Well,
for
I
it.
don't do Facebook.
Zero. You through? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you through?
Yes, sir.
What scholarship you're talking about? Can you tell us something about that?
It's basically, I wish I had, the paper with me, but basically the letter, oh, there it is. Thank you.
I've seen that, and I think $1,000.
Yeah, it basically, she gives specific topics and guidelines that they have to follow, how many words has to be in it. And then there's the deadline somewhere around the middle of, what is it,
November the 22nd.
Yeah, they have a
the
budget. for this.
22nd,
They have
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, oh, the budget, I think, is $1,000.
Okay.
And I think that's for first, second, and third, right, Jim?
So the money for the scholarship comes out of the line item for the education program. So that money is there for for the education, coordinator to use however she needs for that program. So
That's fine, no
Yes,
problem. I'm for it, but I just didn't want to be spending money that we had.
No,
No,
we've
it's
been
in
in
there.
touch with Jim. She has to talk to Jim before he spends any money.
about 500.
She doesn't have an open credit.
Okay, management committee, I'll speak on, for Kay, Director Rogers. Basically, it was very simple. We just reviewed the draft rules that we went through today. That's what we did. We just reviewed those draft rules. That's basically it for the management committee. All right, general manager's report, item 4H.
Making good time. I'll try and keep that trend alive. During the reporting period between August 1st and August 30th, 2024, the district received 12 new Form 100s, which are new exempt wells that are being drilled in the district. No pre-existing wells were registered with the district during that period. As of today, 5% of Lee County has drifted back into drought condition D0, which is abnormally dry. It was fun while it lasted, but we made it through the majority of the summer without drought conditions. So I think coming into September with 5% D0, we're doing pretty well. Overall, Bastrop and Lee County Lee and Bastrop County are still experiencing their 9th and 15th wettest years on record. So even though the rain kind of turned off on us, we're still holding out fairly well. I had a few points about GMA 12. Most of those were covered in the previous agenda item. Like I did mention, I've updated the schedule that was previously approved by the GMA that will look at us having the preliminary evaluations of the last round of DFC, the previous DFCs evaluated hopefully by the end of this year, which will then open up all of next year to developing any new DFCs or any changes that need to be made in response to changes in conditions within the district or any change in priorities from the boards. And the end goal there is to have the actual first round of hearings at the district level in early 2026. We can gather public information, get public comment, take them back to the GMA. By May of 2026, we have to actually stop DFCs, and that starts a formal process that we then have to conduct more hearings over a 90-day period during the summer, with the final goal of having approved DFCs by January of 2027. So we're not quite down to the wire, but we don't have quite as much time as we did when we started this process. The social media policy that Director Smith mentioned, there was some concern at the governance committee about how we handle comments and interactions on our social media pages. And so I brought that concern to Claire, and her immediate response was to develop this policy that we're going to look at. So hopefully that will help offset some of the concerns that we have about how we handle comments and how the district will interact with people through social media. My classic example is the person who went on Google Maps and asked a question about when our meetings were. And it was 3 years before that question found its way to me, so I don't know if they ever found out where our meetings are or not. But
Oh, my.
we need some sort of, policy on how we're gonna handle those interactions, so Claire's done a good job of putting that together. We haven't had a lot of change, we haven't had a lot of change in terms of, process mitigation applications. To be honest, I need to get, I've got a stack of them that I need to get through, so that number will change by the next board meeting, but the rate that they've been coming in has sort of slowed off lately. Currently, we have no pending permits, as President Hernandez mentioned. GMA 12 meets on Friday. Region G will meet the following Tuesday, that's September 24th, at the BRA offices in Waco. And then October 16th is going to be a very fun day for me because Region K meets in Austin that morning, and then we have our board meeting that night. So the two regional planning groups, G and K, one meets next Tuesday, and then K meets in October. And like I say, GMA 12 is coming up this Friday. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, next up, item 4I, consideration of future items, future agenda items. I've got social media policy for October and also the draft budget.
Yes.
If there's anything else, yeah?
Are we still considering going to earlier hours? Do we want that for the agenda? I know Kate's not here, that's one of her burning desires. And I think we should, unless there's some reason I don't know that we don't want to go there.
Director Phillips, are you okay with, an earlier start time for the board meetings? We discussed, 4:30 in the past.
I guess I could do that.
Uh,
Does that work?
What day am I?
Director Burgess, are you good with 4:30? So you're good, you're okay if we were to change things? Okay. Okay, I'll,
Then our October public hearing will be changed based on our new meeting time, right?
it wouldn't be done for October. We wouldn't have this, we wouldn't be able to change the start time, till after the October board meeting.
It'll be November.
So it'll be for November.
We've already sent the notice out to the.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the newspaper notice has already been sent out,
For 6 o'clock?
2 days ago, so it's for 6 o'clock. So so if we're okay with, item I, future agenda items. I don't have any, item J, discussion, consideration, and possible action on district board meeting calendar. I'm not aware of any changes or anything necessary on the calendar. And so the next date and location for, item K would be, October 16th, 6 PM here in Giddings. We will be starting off with the rules hearing. And then after the rules hearing, we will go into our regular board meeting. And so that will be on Wednesday, October 16th here in Giddings. So that will be the item 4K, the date and location of the next meeting. Anybody else with future agenda items? Good with future agenda items? Okay, so that's it for today's meeting. Thank you very much. We will adjourn tonight's meeting at 7:59 PM.